Hi, everybody. It's great to be back in Canada. I was in the UK for a few days for a huge rally led by our friend Tommy Robinson. I've seen different estimates of how many people there were. The lowest estimate I have seen anywhere, and this is by people who hate Tommy Robinson and want to downplay his achievements, was 110,000. But I think it's got to have been at least 250,000, maybe 500,000. You know, the largest rally ever was supposedly the rally against the Gulf War when Tony Blair was PM. Then, allegedly, 750,000 people marched. I think it's quite possible that were the numbers this time. We'll never know for sure, but let me put it this way. It was huge. One of the reasons that's interesting is that there was absolutely no establishment support for it at all. That massive anti-war rally obviously had a lot of fully funded supporters. The Socialist Workers' Party, the Labour Party, different ethnic groups. None of that was apparent here. This was all grassroots. No elected politicians took the stage, not even Reform UK, even though I imagine the crowd would overwhelmingly have supported them. Here's Trevor Phillips, the former head of the UK Human Rights Commission and a very interesting journalist. He's one of my favorite guys over there. He attended the rally. And by the way, I saw him at another Tommy Robinson rally about a year ago. I think he likes going to them. And I think this is one of the fairest reports you'll hear. I mean, he has a few jabs at Tommy, but that's okay. Here, take a listen.
It's quite possible that the person most taken aback by the huge turnout at yesterday's Unite the Kingdom demonstration was its organiser, the hard-right activist known as Tommy Robinson. 150,000 people crammed into central London, most carrying national flags, the Union Jack, the Cross of St George, even the Scottish saltire, protesting about immigration, about free speech, and about the decline of Christianity. There was some fearsome rhetoric, including from Elon Musk, who called for the overthrow of the British government. At the margins, there was some hooliganism. But I think that for those who oppose Robinson and his ilk, the most alarming aspect of the event was just how normal the vast majority of the marchers were. I spent an hour or two amongst them, and my own impression was that they were mostly the sort of people you'd meet in a country pub or in half-time queue for the loo at football or at a concert. There was a sprinkling of black and brown faces, and the event was brought to a close by a gospel group singing Jerusalem. All that must worry the traditional mass parties, Labour and Conservatives, now polling at less than 40% between them. They're draining support to parties like Reform and the Greens. And yet, a man recently out of jail, condemned as an extremist thug by most mainstream media outlets, can rally a demo the size of the entire population of Cambridge or Blackpool. A feat you couldn't imagine either Sir Keir Starmer or Kemi Badenoch pulling off anytime soon. Perhaps the people are sending us all a message. Let's see if anyone at Westminster's listening.
Now, I was there as a friend of Tommy, his former boss. He used to work for Rebel News. I was there as a speaker, invited to say a few words. And I was with a group of rebels in our free speech mission. You may have seen me advertise that, hey, come to the rally with me and we'll tack on some events before and after. And boy, we sure did. We got started on Thursday with amazing speakers, Dr. David Starkey, if you know the name. We went to dinner with Tommy for a few hours on Thursday night, sort of right before the event. You could see he was super energized and excited, still working on last-minute things. His phone was buzzing the whole time. That was pretty fun. Then we went to the rally, but we did other things on the Friday, including going to the House of Lords, and we went to the National Gallery. We did a lot of fun stuff. Then on Saturday, it was all about the rally itself. And we went with Tommy to, I guess we could call it the after party. My point is, we really hung out with Tommy, and for Rebel enthusiasts, I think it was a lot of fun. Anyways, the rally itself, of course, is what counts. And I'd like to show you a little bit of how that went. Let me start with my own brief speech. Now, I wrote it out because I suddenly became nervous. I'm generally not nervous giving speeches, but I just realized how many hundreds of thousands of people were watching, not just there in London, but tens of millions of people online. And I don't think I got nervous that I'd say something dumb. Actually, my main worry was that I would either go way too short or go too long. Tommy said it was very strict. We had to be 5 minutes or less. So I actually wrote my speech out word for word. And I'm not thrilled with how it looked, but I didn't want either of those disasters, running long and being cut off or being too brief. It sort of reminded me, frankly, of my speech to the truckers at the trucker convoy in 2022. Anyways, here's my 4.5-minute speech that I gave. I was actually the second speaker. Take a look.
Hello! Hello and welcome to the hundreds of thousands of you stretching for miles in this great city. And hello to the millions more watching online around the world. That's part of the story, isn't it? The establishment media, the regime media, the legacy media, the government media, they haven't mentioned this rally. They want to pretend it doesn't even exist. Well, it exists. You exist, even if the media party pretends you don't. And if the only source of news we had was the regime media, that would be a problem. But across the United Kingdom and in my country of Canada and around the world, a new generation of citizen journalists is arising to tell the other side of the story. Whether it's the Canadian truckers or the Dutch farmers or now the mothers and grandmothers protesting outside Britain's dangerous migrant hotels. Just as establishment politicians have failed to loyally serve the people, establishment journalists have failed to honestly tell us about our world. But here's the good news. Each of you can be a journalist. If you have a cell phone with a video camera, you can be a journalist. If you have an X account, you can be a journalist. To fill in the blanks left by the media party, our host today, Tommy Robinson, is in fact Britain's leading journalist. And the response from the regime to simply call everyone a racist, it just doesn't seem to work anymore, does it? And more people will watch this rally online than watch all of the official TV news stations and newspapers in the UK combined.
After me, our fellow rebel, our friend from down under, Avi Yemini. Now, he went in without notes and he just revved up the crowd. Here, take a look.
G'day, London! Bloody hell, they wouldn't hear that from Melbourne. G'day, London! That's fair income, that's a bit better. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Avi Yemini from Rebel News. I am Tommy Robinson's taller, more handsome brother. But on a serious note, how good is this? I've been to Tommy Robinson rallies for almost a decade now. Bloody hell, in the beginning I got a lot of crap for them. But they were massive then. But it is nothing in comparison to what we're seeing here today. The world is waking up thanks to Tommy Robinson and his leadership.
There were so many interesting speakers, but I have to say, most of them were not known to, I think, the average person attending. It was European leaders, people from different countries, Germany, France. I don't want to guess all the countries. Here's a clip of Eva Vlardingerbroek, who you probably recognize if you follow social media. She was originally from the Netherlands. Take a look.
Britons, patriots, my friends. Today, I call upon all of you to invoke the help of your country's patron saint, St. George. Legend holds that St. George fought against a dragon that was demanding human sacrifice. He fought a battle of good versus evil. And today, hundreds of years later, we are still fighting that very same fight. We are fighting a fight of truth versus lies, of freedom versus tyranny, and of light versus dark. And just 3 days ago, one of our bravest warriors lost his life fighting it. So today, we also fight for him. We fight for Charlie Kirk. We fight for our nations. We fight for our children. Charlie. Ladies and gentlemen, St. George's shield became your very flag. And now, your flag has to become a shield once again. A shield that will protect us in the fight against the evil forces that, just like back then, against the dragon, we are fighting this time because they are demanding the sacrificing of our children on the altar of mass migration. So, my patriots, raise your flag, wave them high, wave them proudly, because there is nothing that today's dragon fears more than that. And that dragon resides at 10 Downing Street.
One speaker that was very interesting was Eric Zemour. He ran for president of France. He didn't win, but he did very well, considering he's quite an intellectual. He's not a political partisan. He gave a speech in French, so I won't run it now. But Ezra Levant, our Montreal-based reporter who speaks French, managed to track him down sort of in the backstage area and interview him at some length. And we'll publish that in the days ahead. I'm really excited, and I'm really proud, of course. You know I'm proud of having a reporter in Quebec. She does work in English, but she does them en français. And I think we may have been the only Anglosphere reporter who in Alexa who spoke French to interview him. So he certainly was generous with his time. And I, just as a note, he came with his own security, because you can imagine being a critic of Islamic immigration to France, you are marked for death terribly. And these were actually the toughest looking bodyguards at the whole place. Now, there was a surprise guest, and I sort of knew who it was, and maybe you can guess, or maybe you know, Elon Musk. He didn't join in person. That would just be logistically too difficult and a security risk. I think Elon Musk probably has security on par even with the president of the United States. Maybe not quite as much, but it is an extreme security issue. He joined not in person, but by a video stream. So he joined live. Here's just a taste of that now. It was an 18-minute exchange. It was sort of a Q&A with Tommy Robinson himself. I'll just play a bit, but actually I'll end today's show with the full 18 minutes. I encourage you to watch it. Here's Tommy Robinson and Elon Musk, and boy, the crowd just went nuts when they saw him.
You may notice this T-shirt that I'm wearing is great British author George Orwell. What would Orwell think? I think that's generally a good way to look at these things. He would want freedom of speech. He would want the people to know what's real. He'd want the people to fight against government oppression and fight for the truth and fight for the future of Britain. And then you see how much violence there's on the left. With our friend Charlie Kirk getting murdered in cold blood this week, and people on the left celebrating it openly. The left is the party of murder and celebrating murder. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. That's who we're dealing with here. That is who we're dealing with. And then you see how much violence there's on the left, with our friend Charlie Kirk getting murdered in cold blood this week, and people on the left celebrating it openly. The left is the party of murder and celebrating murder. I mean, let that sink in for a minute. That's who we're dealing with here. That is who we're dealing with.
It was a total triumph for Tommy Robinson. First of all, logistically, it went better than any of them had before. I know it sounds funny, but they had a lot of porta potties. I mean, that's something you maybe don't think about until you have a few 100,000 of your closest friends show up. There were massive TV monitors on the back of massive trucks spread out down the street, so you didn't just have to be near the front to see and hear things. This is something new. This was not there for Tommy Robinson's rallies in the past. He would typically have just one stage. So it really went well. There was very high quality production. And it's incredible this all happened when just a few months ago, Tommy Robinson was in prison. Not just in prison, he was in solitary confinement. I do verily believe that they tried to kill him. And frankly, I don't think the state is done. And he was almost jailed again for that train station attack. Remember when Tommy was at the St. Pancras train station and some thug tried to chase Tommy down at the last minute? Tommy punched him and down he went. If it weren't for the closed circuit TV surveillance footage, I think Tommy probably would have been jailed again. The government really treats him as an enemy of the state, but he was the star of the day. You know, I have been following Tommy for a while, for actually just more than 10 years. I got to know him in the final year of Sun News before Rebel News started. So I've been following his career, and he has not changed what he has said. He's the same guy I knew when I met him 10 years ago. He has not changed. What has changed is the rest of the United Kingdom. So things that Tommy Robinson was saying a year ago, let's say, that the entire establishment would attack, now the entire establishment is saying them. Nigel Farage, just as an example, the head of Reform UK, a year ago, he told our friend Steve Edgington that he was against mass deportations. Now, he's got a specific plan, 5 flights a day, keep migrants on military bases, not in hotels. I mean, it's incredible how quickly the world has come. The Overton window has shifted. But I think what's so interesting is that this was a mass protest by ordinary people. There were no big backers, no political parties, definitely no regime media, no big financiers. It was truly a grassroots event, which I think is pretty incredible. The difference between this rally and other rallies, I mentioned some of them, is it's clear now that Tommy isn't going away. If the regime thought that by throwing him in prison and defaming him and throwing the kitchen sink at him, he would somehow stop, he hasn't stopped, has he? The crowds aren't deterred either. In fact, they seem to be bigger than ever and more diverse. As Trevor Phillips noted, lots of mums and dads, lots of couples, even kids and grandmas and grandpas. The crowds are no longer deterred either by the risk of something bad happening, whether that's Antifa taking a run at things or the police themselves. I think Britons have just decided that this is the moment they need to protest. And we've seen this around the country with protests outside those migrant hotels. I think the most interesting thing is that people just don't care that the media call them all racist. It just doesn't stick anymore. And even if it did, they've decided that it's not more important to them than winning their country back. Trevor Phillips himself, that's a black journalist who was the head of the British Human Rights Commission. So it's interesting. They can't really call him a racist, can he? He pointed out, whatever the number is, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 people, could any politician in the UK get that right now? The Prime Minister Keir Starmer or the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch? No, other than maybe to jeer them and say they hate them. I think the state's treatment of Tommy, the persecution, the defamation, it's sort of backfired. I think it's helped Tommy. A terrible price to pay for Tommy. But when Tommy was in prison, that's what made his cause a cause célèbre. That's why Elon Musk, for example, took an interest. And Elon Musk doesn't seem to be as close to the Trump administration now as he once was. But his concern for freedom of speech in the UK is certainly maintained and shared by J.D. Vance and Donald Trump, who is going to the UK this week. I don't know if you know. And that's interesting. I think the U.S. is starting to pay attention to Tommy, whereas a year ago he was only of interest or even known to a small number of conservative journalists. I was asked earlier today if things in Canada are as bad as things are in the UK, and that if we would ever have a rally of 100,000, 200,000 people. Well, first of all, I don't know if we ever have. I know there was a rally in the tens of thousands in October of 1995 when Quebec, the province, was having a vote on separation. And there was a rally to save Canada, a unity rally. I don't know if there's ever been a rally of six figures in Canada before. And I don't think that things are quite as critical yet. We do have migrant hotels. As David Menzies showed us, there's 5,000 migrants staying in hotels in Niagara Falls, just wrecking the tourist economy there. We do have rapes by migrants. We do have sex trafficking. We do have mass cultural change. All the problems they have in the UK, we have here, except we don't have an exposure of these, at least not in the language of being linked to immigration. I think the vast number of temporary citizens who all want to stay here, the foreign students, the foreign workers, has sort of shocked Canadians in the last year. But I don't know if they're at the point of taking to the streets yet, because I think ordinary Canadians detected that Conservatives might be able to absorb that energy. Now, they didn't do so in the last election, but I think Pierre Poilievre regrets that and is going to make that his issue. So if there is a political party into which this energy can go, I don't think you'll see 200,000, 300,000 people on the streets. But in the UK, like I say, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party were both complicit in this mass immigration and all this shenanigans. That's why the energy is going to the upstart Reform UK. I guess my point is, here in Canada, I think people are still hoping the system will work, although I think we're running out of time. I'd like to leave you with the full 18-minute exchange between Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson. I was standing near this stage. It was very exciting. It shows, like I said before, that the propaganda about Tommy Robinson and against Tommy Robinson is just not working. I was quoted in an article today by The Observer in the UK that rehashed Tommy Robinson being an employee of ours. I think that's 7 or 8 years ago now. And I said to the journalist who reached out to me, I said, really, you're just reheating a 7-year-old story? You think that's going to do it? It hasn't worked for 7 years. And by the way, that's not serving the British people who are curious about what's going on. Whether they like it or not, it's a second question. But the first question is, what's going on? And if the UK Observer and the Daily Mirror and the other newspapers over there, the regime media, just smear Tommy and call him names as they are, I mean, that'll please the regime, that'll please the Prime Minister and some radical groups on the left. But ordinary Brits are craving information. And I got to tell you, whereas maybe 5 years ago there was only a handful of citizen journalists, including Rebel News, now there's dozens. And if the Daily Mirror or, well, frankly, every regime newspaper wants to smear the march and smear the march leaders, I almost don't think it matters anymore. The propaganda is not working, and it's forcing people away from the mainstream media. Elon Musk appearing shows that, because Elon Musk, of course, is famous for many things, including he owns X, formerly called Twitter. He owns the largest means of social communication in the world. So who cares what the UK Observer has to say? It shows that Tommy actually has friends in high places, friends with resources. I think there's still a class system in the UK, and Tommy is a working class guy with a working class accent, and that's an issue in UK politics. Well, Americans don't know about that kind of stuff, and Elon Musk, I mean, he's from Canada and South Africa originally, but he's got an American mindset of meritocracy. He doesn't care what your status is. So Tommy does have friends in high places, no matter what the snooty reporters at the fancy papers say. And I think Tommy's supporters felt encouraged by that too. Tommy's supporters are working class people who have been called names like football hooligans or whatever. And now they know that, at least in the case of Elon Musk, they have friends in high places too. Anyways, it was a very exciting week. It was almost a week, and I hung out with a lot of rebels. Rebel News is well loved in the UK on the protest beat. As you know, we've recently hired a new freelance reporter, Emma Dunwell. We met up with her. She's doing great. So we care about the UK. I mean, obviously our home is here in Canada, but the stories I've just talked about, the issues I've just talked about, they're as relevant here in Canada as they are anywhere.